Yeah, Rishabh, do you want me to begin?
Yes, Rahul, go ahead, please.
Okay, great. Hey, super glad to have all of you here. I was looking at the participant list, Cube customers, potential Cube customers, some of you attending Cube's second or third webinar. Just really thrilled to see all of you here. So today we heard about two high performance investment assets. From Devendra, we heard about Indian stocks and a good advice. And then we heard about alternative assets like GRIP. And those of you familiar with Cube know about other assets this, that Cube offers. US stocks under the advice of a Bay Area advisor, US stocks that you can buy on your own, other alternative credit options, managed portfolios, handpicked mutual funds from industry veterans, all of these. And these are things that we've offered for years now. So it's easy to get overwhelmed by just the sheer variety of assets that make up a perfect portfolio potentially in Cube. So what is the personal investment framework within which all of this fits? Like how do you think about picking and choosing from all of these, right? So I think it will help regardless of how experienced we are as investors to just spend a few minutes on the basics and uh, on this basic investment framework. Right? So here goes. Look, we said the whole thing is titled Five Rules of Building a Positive Investing Habit. The whole reason we're talking about these five rules is because we're not taught personal finance well enough in school, like not even in business school. So you emerge from even the IIMs, not so you emerge from the IIMs knowing how to manage currencies, commodities, private equity money, capital markets money, but not your own money. It's astonishing. Right? So that's why most of us start our adult working lives without a healthy relationship with money. And most of us go through our lives that way. We work too long and too hard without enough to show for it at retirement. Now, some of us will hit windfalls. We'll hit windfalls with inheritance, with real estate, with equity in startups that we work in. And at that point, you'll have people approach you saying, I want to manage your money. And then your money will be managed really well. But that's the real irony, isn't it? That those who could best benefit from advice about their money don't learn enough about how to do it. And those people who don't necessarily need advice, who will have enough money, often get approached to have it managed well. So that's why being armed with a personal investment framework is actually a very, very important thing. And I thought we could spend a little time during the course of this presentation walking through it. That's just the background of why we picked this topic today. So I feel strongly about the whole idea, which is why I've been at Cube from day one. I'm also a Cube customer. I often am the guinea pig for a lot of these new assets that we offer. I'm sure you guys know that we never offer anything to our customers without investing in it ourselves. So, from what I've learned from both the providers of assets, both mainstream and alternative, and the advisors on them, uh, is a framework like this, and I can't wait to share it with you. So without further ado, let's just get into these five rules right away. Right? So rule number one is start today. There is a really, really old adage that goes that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And outside of nature, nothing is more true. This adage isn't true for anything else than it is for investing because money compounds, right? When left untouched, growing at a steady rate, money can grow really, really quickly. That's the sort of compound interest that we learned about in school. So it's early in the session, I know, but let's roll out Warren Buffett anyway, which is here is how his wealth grew over time according to Morningstar. And obviously, he's among the world's richest people. He was the richest person for a very long period in time. And this is how essentially his worth is compounded. That is a classic uh, compound interest uh, growth chart. But we were talking about starting today, right? So let's run the argument in inverse. Saying, what if everything had gone the way it had for Warren, but say he began 5 years later? What would this graph look like? Well, the answer is actually pretty easy. You would have 5 fewer points on that graph. And which 5 points? They'd be the ones on the right. You'd simply remove those last 5 because you'd still start from 0. It's just that you'd end at 5 years before where it was. And now you see that a lot of his wealth was built in those last 5 years. So for Warren Buffett, who is legendary for having started very early as an investor, and you don't necessarily have to start as early as him, but that's the amount that length or starting early has had. That's the impact that it's had on his net worth. So it doesn't matter if you're 29 or 39 or 49, or whether you have investing experience or not. Get your house in shape and get your house in shape today. Right? How do you get on that? Well, that's what today is about. Which brings us to rule 2. Just pay your future self first. What this means is figure out how much money you spend in the month, right? And that's your investable surplus. So the first thing you do once you've decided to get your house in order is determine what your investable surplus is, and do it at the start of the month. Your salary comes in at the start of the month, or if you run a business, you pay yourself at the beginning of the month. Great, right? Before you spend anything, whether it's your credit card bill or any other bill, earmark a part of your salary for investments and don't touch it. That the part that you earmark for investments is what we call your investable surplus, and it's not a hard term. It's essentially what you make versus how much you spend. And so therefore, you need to determine how much you spend. This is not really hard. So this really is, nearly 4 years ago, I set this simple automation up on my phone where I could track every single expense. The guys at Cube have heard me talk about it without end. But here's, as a result of that, I have thousands and thousands of data points. And when you plot it, this is really how it looks. So you'll see that obviously there are spikes and there are dips, but by and large, the most common bars over there are also the median. So you can literally see that my expense has been, even though my lifestyle has changed, things have changed, it's essentially been very close to a certain level. It's been fairly steady. And you'll find that a lot of it has been steady for you as well. So you don't have to go and track all of the data points that I did. All you have to do is just track your most frequent and your most significant expenses. And that really will be your investable surplus. Don't worry about getting it right down to the last rupee or the last hundreds of rupees. Doesn't matter, as long as you get a good handle on it. The important part is to set it aside. Because what happens is, you don't really know how much you're going to spend during the month, like how much and when. And so therefore, identifying that and setting it aside is super, super important before you make any expenses. So pay your future self first. Your investable surplus is what you're going to invest and which your future self is going to benefit from. How you set it aside? Well, that's rule 3, which is set yourself up for success. Now that you've determined what your investable surplus is, right? Move it out. Move it out of your bank account. Now, the personal finance blogger, Ramit Sethi, right? What he does is he thinks of it as he uses an analogy from email. He has a few sources of income, not least from his blog. And he says he thinks about it as an email inbox. He says all of his income flows into a particular bank account. And from there, it's like sending email. He sends a certain packet of money to pay his bills, a certain packet for his investments, and so on. And I really like that analogy because it's not only something you can identify with, but you can literally set up your bank accounts that way. So inspired by that, here's what I did, which a lot of the successful investors I know also do. So all we're doing is just following in their footsteps, which is I have one bank account into which income comes in, right? So that's Ramit Sethi's inbox. Now, the moment I get an SMS saying, hey, your pay has arrived in your bank account, like you've seen on the previous slide, we've determined what my investable surplus is. They're saying I make a quick UPI transfer to this other bank account. And that's really all there is to it. And all of my investments are made from the second bank account. The other way I've optimized it is all of my billers have only been set up in bank number one. So it's literally, it's really, once the money has exited that bank number one and gone to bank two, the only money that's left in bank one is what I need and use for my expenses. Even if I needed to reach into bank number two to pay my bills, it would be really, really hard because all my billers have been configured in bank one. That's how I've set myself up for success. And this isn't original. This is stuff that the most successful investors do. The complexity of what goes on the right through investments is something we'll get to in step 4 and 5. But you've heard Devendra talk about it, you heard Nikhil talk about it in terms of what you do. Getting to that is what this step is all about. The moment your money comes in, you've determined your investable surplus, out of sight, out of mind. Get it into an investable bank account. Right? So this really is the first 3 steps. Start today. And the way you start is you determine what your investable surplus is. So you start paying your future self first. Run your household from whatever is left, as opposed to the other way around. And you set yourself up for success. I do want to mention very briefly over here is the reason that we don't follow this, even though it might seem intuitive once you've seen it, is it goes down. So step 2 and 3 are very closely related. If you don't have a good idea of how much you spend every month and when you spend it, we end up leaving too much in our bank accounts because, you don't know when your credit card bill is due or how much it's going to be. So we just overcompensate and there is too much money sloshing around in our bank accounts. And what we do is after all the bills have been paid, at the end of the month, we say, all right, this much is left. Now let's invest it. This is sort of the extreme opposite of what you ought to do. And not all of us are as bad as this. But unfortunately, many of us are. We typically invest at the end of the month as opposed to the beginning. So we're saying just invert that cycle. Right. But now let's get into the weeds. So stay with me. Right. Step 4 is now that money has reached your investment bank account, get a coach. So you're a busy professional. A lot of cubes are optimized for busy professionals, and we seem to attract people like those. The whole point is you have significant cash flow coming in every month, but you're starved of time. But you're not only a busy professional, you have a career. You also have varied interests. You have friends, families, your hobbies, and so on and on. You may even like the idea of investing your own money, but don't. Set aside a small amount every month for that if you like. Label it play money, invest that, or start a fantasy portfolio, whatever floats your boat. Just don't do that with the actual money. Right? Why? Because think about this. The opportunity cost of your time is extremely high. Don't spend it doing something that professionals are happy to do for you. See, some of the most important decisions you'll make in your life are hiring decisions. If you're setting up a company, hiring a co-founder is one of those decisions. Once you've done that, potentially, if you're part of the leadership of a company, then hiring a senior person to lead a specific part of your business, that's an important hiring decision. But even outside of it, hiring a nanny for your kids, that's another hiring decision as well. And you've gotten really good at it. And what I'm asking you guys to do here is to extend it to make the same sort of important hiring decision for your wealth manager or your financial advisor. Do that once. So spend time making that decision well instead of spending time over years managing your own money. A good wealth management company will help you build a portfolio that's perfect for you, as opposed to you trying to do it month after month. Right? To begin with, they'll get you to think about your money beyond just investments. And so now what we're going to do is just, when we say get a coach, and now when we said spend time hiring a wealth manager, once you've made that hiring decision, I'm just giving you a sense of what a good financial advisor will help you do. So it's not just about investments, it's the stuff that you need to do to be able to invest confidently. And chief among that is that first, they're going to help you determine what your investable surplus is. We talked about this right up front in point two, your monthly income minus your expenses. And this is what you'll work with in the remaining steps. But the second thing that they'll do is help you take a risk assessment. Right? This will depend on a bunch of qualitative and quantitative factors, like what phase of life you're in, your dependents, your income, your expenses, how reliable your future expected income is, what your existing portfolio looks like, and other factors. The most experienced wealth managers have gotten this down to a science. Right? And the reason this needs to be performed by somebody else is that we're exceptionally, studies have proven over decades now that we are exceptionally bad at doing this for ourselves. So just let someone else who doesn't have a dog in this fight do it for you, right? Their only incentive is to be paid when you make money, which is great. So let them perform the risk assessment for you. So you've determined how much money you have every month to invest and how much risk you're willing to bear over those investments, including what phase of life you're in, qualitative, quantitative, all of that. Do you have adequate insurance for you and your family? Right? That's the shield icon on screen. Do you have adequate insurance for you and your family in terms of life, in terms of health, in terms of critical illness? Do you have homeowners insurance, renters insurance, all of this put together? It doesn't have to be very expensive, but you do need to think through this. So a good wealth manager will either introduce you to the right policies themselves or will connect you with an advisor who specializes in this. Now what we've said is we're at a point where we can now start thinking about your investments in the immediate, short term, medium term, and long term. What that means is the following. Just the first question your wealth manager is going to ask you once you've done the basics is, have you set up an emergency fund? Because now we're actually starting to talk about money, right? The investing actual money. But have you set up an emergency fund? Your fund should be between 3 and 6 months of your monthly expenses, depending on how many dependents you have. And this should include EMIs. Why is this? Well, typically, if you lose your job, certain times like these especially, the evidence is that you'll typically need about 3 months to find a job. In uncertain times, it could be more. And during this period, the last thing you need is wanting to worry about your money. And do you have enough? Do you not? Just focus on getting your life back on track. This is job losses is one. It's true for any other emergency you might have. Just having that cushion helps. So that's when your emergency fund comes in handy. This is not a fund you build up immediately. It's not saying just park all of your cash in an emergency fund. Build it up over the next 12 months. And a good wealth manager, a good coach will help you get that set up. So because you need your money in the case of an emergency, you want it in very safe assets that you can access fairly quickly. And so those will typically be things like liquid funds or overnight funds. We'll get to all of those in a second. Now that you've set up your emergency fund, the next question they're going to ask you, and bear with me, we're going to get to the actual investments. But the whole point of me telling you this is you need to set a solid foundation for yourself before you can invest, because you're going to invest for years. Right? So what the solid foundation looks like is the last question in that foundation that your wealth manager is going to ask you is, what about your goals? Like, you're going to have goals that are right up front, 0 to 3 years. There'll be goals that are slightly longer than that, 3 to 5 years. Well, are you saving for those systematically? Are you confident? Because when the goal arrives, when it is time for you to make that expense is going to arrive all at once. And if you know that you're going to make that expenditure, which is the whole point of a goal, and you don't save up for it, your choice at that point of time is going to be either taking all of the cash that you have on hand, typically from your emergency fund or whatever investments you've already made, and then using it to spend, or worse, you're going to have to actually take a loan, which is typically what people end up doing. That's a terrible way of funding your goals, because you'll end up paying more than what the item actually costs. So the one way you actually save for them systematically is to approach it like emergency funds, except that you're building your emergency fund over 12 months. Here, you know how long your goal is going to be. If it's 3 months, you need to save up for it over 36 months. If it's 5 years, then 60 months, and so on. And the sort of stuff that you'll invest in is going to be very similar to the sort of instruments that you use to park your emergency fund in, except not as safe. You can allow for yourself to earn a little more on those because you don't need them immediately. You have a little more confidence about when you need them. But the important thing is to have this set up, right? Now that you've gone through all of this, you've done your risk assessment, you've determined the insurance, you've determined your investments, your investable surplus, and you've saved for your goals. You're ready to invest. And what does that look like? Well, anything that's left over and above, because here's where all of this is going to be really useful, which is having done all of this, anything that's left over is yours to invest, worry free. At this point, you've taken care of everything that you need. If there is something if something goes exceptionally wrong, you've got insurance. If there is a cash demand, you've got your investable surplus. When you've been funding your goals, and now you can invest worry free. So this cash can accelerate as fast as your advisor can make it. If this sounds, because we spent quite a lot of time sort of just revving before we get to a point that says, oh, okay, now you can invest. If this sounds like you have very little left over, I have three things to say. Right? One is temporary. All of the stuff that's on the top of your screen, up to goals, is only valid until you need to fund them. These are all finite buckets, right? Because once you've filled them, all of those beakers at the top are full, every little bit of your investable surplus will go into investing. That's when stuff actually takes off. And that can take off without you having to worry about it. That brings us to my second point, which is it's not all or nothing. You don't have to fill up those beakers one by one, those buckets one by one. It's not like 100% of investable surplus has to be filled before you can, 100% of the emergency fund needs to be filled before you can save a single rupee towards your goals. No, you're going to do this over time. You will always begin investing in that last bucket from month one. That's not a problem. And the third thing is it's necessary. This whole peace of mind that we're talking about, that's the whole point. The whole reason you invest is because you want to live your life. The last thing you want to do is keep looking over your shoulder to say, all right, is everything okay? Am I prepared for stuff that I may or may not face? In the case of goals, these are expenses that will come up. If you want to buy a car, you will buy a car. If you're planning for a wedding, that is going to happen. You better be prepared for it. That sort of foundation, the sort of peace of mind it gives. I have personally experienced this. Many people who we've set up for Cube with this framework have experienced this. There is nothing like it. Because then once your investments start really growing, they grow with a solid foundation. Now let's focus very briefly on what that last bucket looks like, right? What does that make me very rich early retirement bucket look like, right? Well, a fully diversified portfolio looks something like this, right? Assets in a diversified portfolio, what you've got in every row roughly corresponds to what you saw in the chart before. You've got emergency, short term, medium term, long term. Emergency is your emergency fund. Short term and medium term are your 0 to 3, 3 to 5 goals. Long term is what you use to maximize your wealth. Right? And the columns are, remember we said the first thing you do is take a risk assessment. Well, if it turns out that you have a conservative risk profile, here is how you will park your money in these assets for the short, medium, and long term. Similarly, if you're moderate risk or if you're mostly footloose, then you could be aggressive. Here are the assets that you could invest in. It's beyond the scope of this particular session to go into the details of each. But suffice it to say that Cube offers all of these. It's a portfolio that we've built up over time. But some of these you've heard of today. So Indian stocks under advice on the bottom right is what Devendra talked about. We have many alternative products, alternative credit. So GRIP will come up, so it will fit in the alternatives bucket. Liquid loans, which you heard referred a few times today, is alternative credit. All of the funds that you see here, anything that's marked liquid fund or anything that ends in MF or mutual funds, is handpicked by advisors who've been dealing with mutual funds since the 90s. These were around for the genesis of the Indian mutual fund industry as well. So between this is a diversified portfolio that you will build. That's eventually perfect for you. It's kind of, this level of complexity freaks most people out. And that really is the crux of what my point is. So you don't need to deal with any of this. Is it really worth your time? You need to ask yourself this. Is it really worth your time determining not just once, but on an ongoing basis, A, what assets are available in the market, B, which ones, if it's mutual funds, which mutual funds are right for you? Because not all debt funds, not all aggressive equity funds are right. In the case of stocks, it's actually worse. Of the universe of stocks that are available in India and the US, which ones are right for you? Again, not just now, but also on an ongoing basis. And then actually building and tracking your portfolio. Every single investor who doesn't have this sort of thing set up maintains a private Excel sheet in which once a month, whatever, they enter in values and then potentially calculate what their share in short, medium, and long is, and the more active among them will balance it. And you have to ask yourself, is this really worth your time? If you like doing it, great. Either get into that profession or set aside a small amount of play money, like we said. But let someone else handle this complexity. Because new assets will come up. Some of these will no longer be valid. Some stocks may no longer be valid for you to invest in. Let someone else make those decisions and pay them for it. So this really is this whole thing that we talked about, this Cube, what Cube calls its bucket philosophy, is what a good wealth manager will do for you. We spend the most amount of time of the 5 steps. We will spend the most amount of time on step number 4. The reason we want to get into the weeds is because I just wanted to impress upon you guys saying, get help or get a wealth manager or get a financial advisor isn't just about saying, all right, somebody else might do it better than you. It's a question of, do you really want to spend your time doing this? And I just wanted to impress upon you how much work is actually involved in making sure that you build the right sort of foundation. And then within that last bucket of actual investments, how much of work is involved there. Let someone else handle it. Which really then brings us to the last and final step 5, which is, as the motorcycle ad from the 80s said, fill it, shut it, forget it. Operate your life from your expense budget, right? And your emergency fund, and rely on your insurance. Leave your investment untouched for as long as possible. Because you see, too often people don't build the base that we talked about in the previous point. They treat their investments as their personal bank. So when markets are, in the absence of all of that foundation, when markets are good, they see their portfolio growing and they withdraw from it to fund expenses. They profligate with their money. When markets fall, they panic because they've built this habit of relying on those investments, right? So that's when panic selling also happens. So at the very opposite, when Devendra talked about averaging downwards, this is sort of a panic-fueled version of that, where you in fact say, instead of saying 20 se kitna niche jayega, 16 se kitna niche jayega, you're looking at the falling price and saying, my God, I gotta get out of it. That's the opposite thinking. But if it's a good stock, you've just locked in your losses. It's a terrible way to think about your investments. It's also a terrible way to live. So I've seen this happen to too many people. So the golden rule is, don't use a long-term wealth chest for short-term stuff, right? Your investment corpus is not your personal expense piñata to just beat and open whenever you think you need money. So the last analogy I'll use is, that thing we learned about, we heard in when we were kids about the peasant who wins this reward from the king. The king asks him, what do you want? He pulls out a chessboard and he says, okay, 1 grain of rice on the first one and 2 grains of rice on the second, and it keeps doubling. We all know how it ends. That's the whole. It's the classic compounding story that people talk about. But in the context of this point, imagine what would happen if the peasant kept taking rice out. Like, I'm going to take rice out from here to fund whatever I need. Chances are he'd run out of chessboard squares before he got to a substantial amount. This actually happens. This happens to too many investors. They keep working, they keep investing, they keep taking out, and they never build an investment corpus, regardless of how good their investments were or how much money they put in. Just let compounding work its magic, right? So rule 5 is really just follow rules 1 to 4. Stick with it, right? Don't touch the investment corpus. So guys, to recap, right, start today. Determine what your investable surplus is first before making any investments. 3 is move that investable surplus out of sight, out of mind. Automate it if you like. Right? Get a coach to determine for you what is right to do with that investable surplus that is now in its own investment bank account. And last, just follow rules 1 through 4. Do not touch that investment corpus. If a lot of this sounded like the basics, it is. If a lot of it sounded dreary, it is. But let someone else bother about it, and let someone else bother about it once. The most important decision that you need to make is hiring the right wealth manager. They will be aware of all of this. Right? And we all know someone or the other in our lives, in our circles, who has an opinion on what the a hot asset or a hot stock is about. In fact, we have many such people. But relatively few of us know someone who's actually built great wealth for themselves without having had a point event like a large company sale or an inheritance or something like that. Someone who's just built up we know perhaps 1 or 2 people in our lives. The number of people who have an opinion on what the right thing to do is orders of magnitude more. And that should tell you something about the need for this sort of dull 5-step process. Just follow it, guys, and get a coach. These are the 5 rules of building a positive investment habit. Get a wealth partner who can help you maintain this habit. That's why we built Cube Wealth. That's all I got.